All right, so today we are talking about how to draw crease patterns with hexagon symmetries, and I'm going to start from the very beginning. So starting with a blank Inkscape file, but I'm not going to make you go through all the struggles that I went through when I was first learning to draw these things, because there are templates for that. Specifically, I made templates for that, and you can download them with the link in the description, and we can open up a variety of files. Not all of these are in that templates download, but this CP triangle is. And so now we have a triangle grid, and I have 64 divisions from side to side. I have darker lines, it's a little bit hard to see zoomed out, every 8 divisions. And I have references for mountain and valley folds. But that's not the end of it either. I can also grab another custom template. It's triangle blocks. And that's going to give me most of the twists that I need, at least as a beginner. These are all the twists that you need to use on a triangle grid. So one of the things I'm going to do today is kind of randomly generate different patterns. And I would like to see comments in the chat of which options to take. So at any point in time, just comment A or B, and that'll be my effectively random number generator for different options. But back to actually drawing the things. I'll start with the simplest case. The simplest case with hexagonal symmetry is alternating hexagons and triangles. So I don't need these line styles because I have the other template. So I'm going to get rid of those and go over to my template file. And I'm not seeing any A's or B's in the chat, so I'm going to randomly decide. So closed or open hexagon, I'm going to go with open. And I'm automatically choosing it on the front of the paper. That is the center polygon with mountain folds. And then let's go with the triangle closed and on the back. And actually, I'm going to make that hexagon right-handed. You'll see 2 columns that are copies of the same things. That's right and left-handed versions. And then we'll go for a triangle. I'll go for the closed back. And we can select those, Control-C to copy, come over to our grid file, and Control-V to paste. Excuse me. And zooming in, I'm going to drag that hexagon over, and theoretically, we should have enabled snapping. And we have grids that are on. And the main snapping things that I use are grids, path intersections, and cusp nodes. Sometimes I'll use smooth nodes, but that's mostly if I'm doing things with curves. So now that we've verified that snapping is on, it'll snap to stuff. And then we can take the triangle, and that'll snap to stuff. And let's say I want to have these a little bit closer together. So I'm going to shorten the lines at the end of the triangle. Now, one thing to notice, and the distinction between the right and left-handed columns, is that these lines are perfectly matching up, and that is very much by design. So the right-handed ones pair exactly with the left-handed ones. So I'm going to hit F2 to go into editing by node and grab all of these pleats and make them one spacing shorter, or I guess I already selected those. And then I have to like click off to deselect the particular thing and grab the whole one again and come back. So if you've watched any of my videos on hexagonal symmetry, you'll know that whenever there's 6-fold rotational symmetry, there is also 2-fold and 3-fold rotational symmetry. And I'm seeing now that we have a few more people watching, comment in the chat either A or B, and go ahead and put in multiple entries. We'll be using these as random generators. So when we have hexagons alternating with triangles, the hexagon has the position of 6-fold rotational symmetry in the center, and the triangle has the position of 3-fold rotational symmetry in the center. The 2-fold rotationally symmetric position is going to be between 2 triangles, between 2 hexagons. And so we don't need to worry about that one. And because we're going to be drawing things further out, the kind of boundary of what you're able to see when you have, and I just realized that my face is being covered up by the little logo there, so I'll move myself up. So yes, I am watching the chat. And so when we have the hexagonal symmetry, that hexagon cutout, if we're taking the pure case, is going to have its corners at the positions of 3-fold rotational symmetry, which would mean it would cut through the triangle twists. But we can do a little trick here, a little bit of math, and say, okay, these triangles have 3 hexagon neighbors. So each hexagon owns a third of a triangle. And there are 6 of these triangles, so each hexagon owns 6/3 of triangles. And we can reduce that down to each hexagon owns 2 whole triangles. Now these 2 whole triangles have to be in 2 different orientations. I can't just take this one and stick it over here and say, okay, I have all the triangles I need. No, I need to go into the transform menu, rotate it 60 degrees, and then I can attach it either neighboring or across, but not at 120 degrees from the original. And so since we said the hexagon has 6 triangle neighbors, it owns a third of each of them. So it owns 2 whole ones. And now we can say, okay, select all, group, and this is what I'm going to copy and paste everywhere. After I duplicate it. So duplicate and then move. And if we want to cover the whole thing, I'll select all, duplicate, move, duplicate, move. And I just selected all but that last one because I'm pretty sure that that will get me out to the edge in the other direction. And then to prove that it works in all directions, I can select all, duplicate, and move. And again, we have snapping on, so this is supposed to be behaving nicely, but Inkscape is being a little bit stubborn and not snapping very well, which you can often ameliorate by moving smaller groups of things at once. But anyways, so that is the hexagons and triangles, and we are now going to move on to a symmetry where we have twists in all 3 positions of rotational symmetry. So I'm going to open up a new grid template file, So I've saved the template file in my templates folder, and so it's very easy to find and make copies of. And again, I'm going to get rid of those line styles because I already have everything in my twists template. So let's say we want to have and again, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I'm going to make the decisions here. A closed hexagon on the front, surrounded by closed rhombi. And I'm going to copy just those because those are going to determine what the triangle needs to be. And paste them in, put that hexagon in the center. And for this, I'm going to have the through line of the rhombus pointed into the center. And that is, so if we tried to do it another way, you can see we would run into conflict very quickly, where we weren't able to get other things going around. And so I'm going to duplicate that, come over to my transform menu, rotate 60 degrees, and bring that next rhombus into place. So in this structure, the hex rhomb tri rhomb structure, the twists are all in their positions of maximum symmetry. So the hexagon has 6-fold rotational symmetry, the rhombus has 2-fold, and the triangle has 3-fold. So looking at this, I need a triangle that is centered here, because it will interact equally with both of its neighboring rhombuses. And a triangle that is centered there with valley folds coming straight in to that center point is a closed triangle on the back. And so I can come back to my template, grab the right-handed closed triangle on the back, copy that, and paste over. And I notice first, it's not in the right rotation. And second, the pleats are too long. So I don't really want to have overlap, especially with those dashed valleys. So I'm going to hit F2 to come into the Edit by Node menu. And I can also get that from the sidebar over here. And these are snapping. We're going in. So now we have items in our 6-fold, 3-fold, and 2-fold positions. And we need to determine exactly how many of each we need to get our copy and paste arrangement. So with the 3-fold, we established in the last demo that we need 2 copies. And with the 2-fold is shared between 2 hexagons, and there are 6 of them. So each hexagon owns half each of 6 things, so you need 3 different ones, which is convenient because there's also 3 different orientations. And so I grabbed both this rhombus and the triangle, rotated them, and now I have everything I need to copy everywhere. So I can group that, and that doesn't look like a hexagon, but it tiles hexagonally. So if I actually duplicate that, I can come over here, everything's connecting. And I'm just going to do a ring around the center to prove that it does indeed tile. And so we're able to get everything that we need and nothing that we don't. There's no overlap in our pleats. Everything is working just fine. So that is really the key as far as math goes to how to draw hexagon symmetries. You've got your 6-fold in the center, and then you have 3 of your 2-fold positions and 2 of your 3-fold positions because they are shared with other hexagons. And so we're able to generate our full patterns, even though we're not putting in each twist individually. So I want to go through a couple more cases. The next one, so the first case we did had the 6-fold and the 3-fold positions as twists. This one had all 3 positions as twists. The next one is going to have the 6-fold and the 2-fold as twists. And then we'll go and see what if just the 6-fold is a twist. And then go in and say, okay, what if we have something like the arrangement where the 2-fold was the twist, but not the 3-fold, and shift things out so we get back to the 3-fold being in a twist, getting into some more complex structures. So I'm going to bring up a new grid file. And again, these template files that I'm using are freely available, and the link is in the description section. And I'm going to grab, we don't have any input in the chat, so I'm going to grab somewhat at random a hexagon. I'm picking between open and closed. I did closed last time, so I'll do open this time. And it's going to connect directly to a triangle. I'm going to choose open front because we haven't done that yet. And then it's going to go to a rhombus, and let's call that rhombus closed back. And that's going to be a right-handed rhombus. And by the way, I don't think I've drawn this particular pattern before. And we're going to copy that in, move the hexagon into the center, and then the triangles are going to go around it. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that triangle, use the transform menu, set the rotation to 60 degrees. That's the other bit of math. We have 60-degree angles with our equilateral triangles. And then I need to figure out how this rhombus is going to fit in. It's going to fit right here. And this rhombus is going to be a position of 2-fold rotational symmetry. So anything I need to do on one side of it, I also need to do on the other. And I also need to edit these pleats to be 2 spacings longer. And that is everything I need from my rhombus. So now we're getting into some drawing tips and tricks. I'm going to go ahead and delete the first triangle so I can grab these 2, and I'm going to duplicate them, and I'm going to choose to rotate with the transform menu because that defaults to treating the selection as a group as opposed to the top menu up here. And so I'm going to rotate it 3 times so it can come to the opposite side of the hexagon. Then I'm going to select all, deselect the hexagon, duplicate, rotate 60, and it exactly matches. Duplicate, rotate 60. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, okay, these rhombi are all 3-fold rotationally symmetric positions, so I need to get rid of 3 of them. Delete those, and now I can group and copy. And I'm going to go ahead and select some larger chunks And again, this particular crease pattern isn't one that I've drawn before. It's just like semi-randomly generated. But I knew exactly how to draw it because I knew the structure that I was using. And I knew where the positions of symmetry were and how to modify things to get that to happen. So that's our example where we have twists in positions of twofold rotational symmetry, and then the threefold positions are kind of sitting out there without anything in them. We just have 3 each of the open triangle on the front and the closed rhombus on the back going around this loop. So our next example is going to be when there's no twists in either the twofold or threefold positions. And so I'll bring up a new template and delete those line styles. And this one, I'm going to have, let's see, let's go with closed, and then let's do a open rhombus on the back, and I'm going to bet on a closed triangle on the front, and this is going to, with the spacing that I mean, none of this was premeditated, but I'm able to kind of rapidly assess what things are going to do. And so I can say like, oh, this is going to need a closed triangle, or oh, this is going to need an open triangle. And in this case specifically, I want to have my rhombus a bit closer. So I'm going to shorten just that one pleat because this rhombus is not going to be a position of twofold rotational symmetry. Then I'll duplicate it, go to my transform menu, rotate 60 degrees, put it on that next pleat, and that's going to tell me where my triangle needs to go. It's going to need to be right here. You can see I need to change things about a couple of the different pleats. So I'm going to need to bring this all the way down here, this one down here, and you can either, so in these cases where you're taking some point and bringing it back so that the entire segment is gone, you can choose whether to delete that node or to just stick it on top of the existing one. And so that's how our triangle is going to fit in. And also, because I modified the pleats for the rhombuses, I also need to make those same modifications on the other sides. And the easiest one to do that is going to be this one here on the left, because this rhombus over here only moved the mountain one spacing. And I know I was talking as I was moving things, but we can verify that. And so then I'll delete the old one that has the non-standard, or at least has the standard, not the modified arrangement of where exactly the folds are. And just like I did with the previous example, I'm going to duplicate these, rotate 180 degrees, pop it on the other side, select all, deselect the hexagon, duplicate, rotate, duplicate, rotate. So with these, one interesting thing is, you might notice I didn't change anything about these outer pleats. And that's because it actually doesn't matter what they are. I'm going to select all and group, And I can change the pleats to whatever I want them to be, really, as long as I change all 6 equivalent pleats the same way. So the triangle pleats and the rhombus pleats are kind of independent, and they're just going to change. Put that back. They're going to change how far apart the next repeat gets put. And it actually doesn't matter like their relative positions in a particular repeat, as long as all the triangle ones are the same and all of the rhombus ones are the same, then triangle plus rhombus and triangle plus rhombus are still going to be the same. Or I should say triangle plus rhombus and rhombus plus triangle. Commutative property of addition for the win. So this one is kind of more clearly obvious that it's going to repeat nicely than the others. And that's because I just have a chunk. I have some way that it's interfacing with its neighbors, and that chunk is 6-fold rotationally symmetric, and it's just plopping down in those 6-fold rotationally symmetric positions. Excuse me. And by the way, this is something I haven't drawn before either. So there's lots of options, and with these in particular, I kind of have a free choice for the triangle, whether it's going to be open or closed. I could even make it double open without overlapping things. And one of the benefits of doing this triangle twist as an open twist is it's going to open up the spacing in here. It's going to shift this pleat over another spacing, and we're going to end up with a tube in here instead of, or maybe we'd end up with 3 spaces. That would be interesting. But no, I think it would be 2. And so here's an option where we can have things further away or closer together. And here in this dense area, we're going to have some overlap. So either this rhombus tip or that rhombus tip is going to be visible and the other will be tucked under. So there's upsides and downsides to different choices of twists here. And then final option, I want to take a look at actually a pattern that that is in the thumbnail of this video. And I'm bringing up my new grid template. My computer might start working hard because I have a lot of files open. Getting rid of those extra line styles that I don't need. And I'm going to go over to my twists template menu. And I'm going to grab a hexagon on the front, a closed triangle on the back, a open rhombus on the front, and let's see where that gets us. And this is actually broadly similar to, well, not so similar to what I chose on the last one. But we're going to have this hexagon, and this time I'm going to space the triangles as close as possible. So you'll notice that right now I have 3 spaces of valley here. I want to get that down to 1. So I'm going to need to edit both the triangle and the hexagon. And one tip with editing the hexagon is if you edit opposite sides, then select the whole thing and ungroup, and then delete everything except those two that you edited. Now you have things on opposite sides that you can duplicate and rotate and then regroup. So that is going to get me as close as possible with this triangle. And I'm guessing that I'm also going to need to shorten these two pleats as well, although it's not super decided yet. And then I'm going to duplicate and stick that in there and see how I can get this rhombus to match up with it. So I need to rotate this so it can come in here. And yes, the corner is exactly on that triangle corner, and that's okay. It'll just be hidden. So taking this out, I'm going to need to completely get rid of that whole line, actually. And this valley is going to come back to just one spacing. Get rid of that end node, and I'm also going to move these, and that should snap right in. So it's an exact match, no overlap. And so I also need to edit this triangle to match. And now I'm actually technically didn't need to edit that triangle because I only edited one side of one triangle. And I'm going to get rid of it to duplicate and do my little rotate to the opposite side, grab everything but the central hexagon, duplicate, rotate trick. And now I've got a hex trie rhomb trie setup, but I'm not going to treat the rhombus as something that's rotationally symmetric. I'm going to push that rotational symmetry further out, and I'm going to grab another template, and this template is actually in my advanced twist techniques course, not in the previous download. And let's see if I can actually read right at the top, cluster 4 triangles. So Advanced Twist Techniques has a couple templates that are not in the general download. This cluster 4 triangles is one of them. And then the master toolbox gets updated every year, and I'm planning on adding the hybrid hexagon twists as its own file in there this year. So I guess I should explain Advanced Twist Techniques is where I put the most advanced stuff, the new stuff that I've learned each year. And back to the pattern at hand, when I'm looking at these clusters, you can see I have them organized by these numbers, and those numbers represent distance between parallel mountain folds. So as long as the distance between parallel mountains matches, I am good to go for adding any of these clusters to an existing tessellation. So the distance between my parallel mountains here is 1, 2, 3, 4 grid spacings. So I'm going to grab something from the 4 grid spacings category. I happen to know that this particular one works well for this pattern. And I'm going to copy it and come over here. And this cluster of 4 triangles is going to be my position of threefold rotational symmetry. And so I can have any spacing that I want on this. I just happen to know that this spacing is the one that matches my cover for this video. And so I'm going to go for that spacing, which means that I'm going to need to edit these rhombus twists. And let's see, so I'm going for center right there. That means that this needs to go 2 spaces, and that one's going to go away while that corner goes away, and I bring this back 2 spaces. So I can double check that. And then I'm going to need to change 1 spacing each on these other 2 pleats. And I'm going to need to duplicate that effect all the way around. So this one, I'm bringing the mountain back to just 1 spacing and getting rid of the valley. So that duplicates it for my triangles, but not for my rhombuses. And so I'm going to copy the editing from the pleat up here onto this one. And then I'm actually going to delete the remainder of the rhombuses, the ones that don't have both pleats edited, and then duplicate this. And here I can save myself a click and rotate 90 degrees twice instead of 60 degrees 3 times, and duplicate, apply, duplicate, apply. And now I have my 3-fold position, but you might be saying, wait, you've also got a twist that is beyond the 3-fold position. Well, the math doesn't actually care. I can treat this whole thing as 1 twist, duplicate it, copy it to the other side, and say, okay, this hexagon, triangle, rhombus, triangle thing, that is a big hexagon with 2 pleats coming out of it. And these clusters of 4 triangles, that is a big triangle with 2 pleats coming out of it. So I've got a hexagon thing and 2 triangle things in 2 different orientations. And so I can group that and duplicate to my heart's content. So I'm just going to do the copies around the center. But as I talked about in my Symmetries overview video, that's enough to know that it's going to copy everywhere. And so that is the crease pattern for Sunflower Field, a pattern that I'll be talking about more on Instagram and YouTube this week. And it's actually a easier thing to fold than if the rhombus was in a position of 2-fold rotational symmetry, because if you look at it, this next triangle out is further away than the triangle in at the center. And so we're not going to have the outer tip of the rhombus sinking under another pleat. So this is the pattern that I would recommend folding instead of the hex tri rom tri version of this structure, or this choice of twists. Of course, you can always space everything out in extra spacing, and that also helps. But now you have the tools to say, like, okay, these are the twists that are used. This is the structure that they're used in. I can draw my own crease pattern and know things about the tessellation. Or I could also buy Tessellation Garden and see all of the 380 plus crease patterns that Madonna, me, has drawn, and not have to do that work myself. So there's lots of options when it comes to drawing crease patterns. And I will say that drawing the crease patterns myself really helped me to learn more about the structure of the tessellations. And so it is an exercise that I would recommend anytime that you're working on a new structure. Draw a crease pattern for it. And you don't need to draw every single line one by one. I think I demonstrated that you can very quickly draw crease patterns if you have the right templates. So happy folding, everyone. I will see you next week to talk about drawing in square symmetries. So happy folding, and I will see you there.